So whether you have IBS, IBD, gut issues, whatever it might be, you might get into flare up every once in a while. And I've been through many, many flare ups. So I have a few words of wisdom that hopefully will help some of you. This is not a recommendation necessarily, but it's just simply what works best for me. So I'm going to share a few things and hopefully you'll learn something. So number one, the obvious. We'll get through the obvious things first because sometimes it's not obvious. It wasn't really obvious to me, but you gotta get enough sleep, enough rest. So when you're in a flare up, if you're sleeping 5 hours, 5.5 hours, 6 hours, that's not a good idea because you're just gonna prolong the flare up, something that you could recover in a few days. It might take a few weeks. So be sure, get at least like 7 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep. Your gut needs to recover. Even when you're not in a flare up, it's not really a great idea to not be getting enough sleep, especially if you're eating before bed or something like that. Your gut needs to recover. If you're not letting it recover, it's going to get even more inflamed, and it's just that toxic cycle. So make sure you sleep enough. Following that, the next tip is eat minimal meals, right? Have something small because that's going to give your gut a break, right? So whenever I'm not in a flare up, even though I want to gain weight, I'm always trying to bulk and eat as much as I can. But in a flare up, you can't do that. And even if you're hungry, just have something small to keep the body, satisfied, but don't overstuff yourself with too much because you're going to pay the price for it. And again, your gut's not going to recover. It's not going to heal. It's just going to take longer, right? So some might be thinking, well, there's these special foods that I eat when I'm on a flare up. And hey, if that works for you, if you're eating like, I don't know, maybe it's a pineapple or a mango or whatever, I don't know what you're eating. If you have some magic food that you need to eat on a flare-up to make you feel better, do that. Okay, the next thing is coffee. Even for someone without IBD, without IBS, without gut issues, they're having coffee, they're going to the washroom shortly after. So give your body a break. Don't have coffee. It's not necessary. You say, well, I need my caffeine. Have a matcha, right? Yes, maybe caffeine is the thing that is going to cause some inflammation. It's going to exacerbate the flare-up a little bit. But if you must have the caffeine, don't have it through coffee. Have it through something else, some other form. It'll be slightly better on your system, and you'll still be able to have the energy. So not necessarily a no to caffeine. You might still have to go to work. You might still need the energy. You might still need to get through the day. But I find that drinking coffee, drinking espresso when I'm in a flare-up is like drinking gasoline. It's like goes right through my system. So that's not what we're looking for. Something else that also might not be obvious. So the thing that people don't know, a common misconception is like, hey, you're in a flare-up. That means like you're at home for a month. Well, it's not really the case for most people unless it's a severe flare-up. Most of the time it starts as like a minor flare-up. And then if you don't do anything about it, it becomes a major flare-up. But truthfully, you're just living your life as usual. It's just a little bit more annoying or a lot more annoying. And so you might be invited out for dinner. You might be invited out to a friend's house. Somebody might offer you some new food to try. So the main point here is avoid trying new foods. If you're going to a restaurant, if you're going to a friend's place, if somebody's offering you food, if it's not something that you normally eat, if it's something that's kind of risky or you're unsure, you've never had it before, now is not the time to take a chance. So avoid new food during a flare-up, no matter how good it looks. For me, it's like 9 times out of 10. If I'm trying new food during a flare-up, Moore's Law, like things will just get worse. So avoid that. The next thing in terms of avoiding food is avoid sugar. Avoid having food with too much sugar. I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm in a flare-up, I just feel like having donuts. Something in my body is like, give me junk food. And then if you follow that craving, you're, again, not going to have a good time. So avoid too much sugar, sugary drinks, and just anything with a lot of sugar. It's an inflammatory. So again, we want to avoid as many inflammatories as possible. Something that's a cheat for me, however, when I'm in a flare-up, is I love having ginger ale. I used to have it as a kid. Every time I had an upset stomach, I'd have some ginger ale. So I guess in my head, it has some effect that when I have it, I feel better. But if you're doing that too much, you're going to feel it. I've definitely drank a bit too much. And I said, an hour or two later, I'm like, I'm not going to do that again because as much as it makes me feel good in the moment, it doesn't actually solve the problem. So avoid sugary drinks, sugary food. If you have to have a tiny little bit for comfort, do that, but Don't overdo it. The last kind of food tip is stick to simple foods only. When I'm in a flare-up, I don't have brown rice anymore. I have white rice. I don't have whole grain bread. I have white bread. And that might be counterintuitive because you're like, wait a second, white bread is an inflammatory. Right, well, it's an inflammatory, but it's not as bad on your gut as having seeds that could be found in whole grain breads. Brown rice is a little bit more tough than white rice. So you sort of have to take a more pragmatic approach there, more practical approach in terms of, what is actually going to be an issue at the moment. So a lot of times white rice, white bread is just easier on my system at the moment. Of course, over the long term, you do want to switch to those better alternatives. And just another thing, like when it comes to salads, don't overdo it with dressing. Don't overdo it with high fibrous vegetables. You want to be as tame as possible on your gut. So anything that's going to potentially push the limits, don't do that. Now, the last thing I think that's super important for me when I'm in a flare-up is not to completely stop exercising. So I might be in an exercise routine. I might be, working out once a day, once every few days. You don't want to stop that. What you want to do is you want to lower the intensity. So rather than having vigorous workouts, rather than pushing yourself on a run or trying to beat your weight record in terms of weightlifting and so on, don't do that. It's not a good idea. You're going to push yourself and your body is going to need more time to recover. So you're essentially putting your body in a situation that it has to recover even more beyond the flare-up. So you don't want to do that. You just want to get the heart rate up a little bit. You want to get the blood flowing. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't really know the exact reason why it works, but it certainly makes you feel a lot better. And the body's system is sort of functioning as much as possible without going too much overboard on that. So exercise a bit, nothing vigorous. It's going to help you out. So you might have some stuff that you can share with us. Throw it in the comments or let me know, message me and let me know some techniques or tips and tricks that you have. These are the main points that I have as someone who has colitis for, I don't even know how long now, maybe like almost 10 years, 9 years. That's crazy. Cool. Stay healthy, folks.